Welcome to the Tax Endgame with Mark Kanakaris from Cherokee Tax Group. As an advanced tax strategist and enrolled agent licensed by the Internal Revenue Service, Mark is uniquely qualified to go deeper into the revenue codes than most accountants. He understands and interprets the provisions on how you can legally save on your personal, trust, and estate taxes. Now you can reroute those wasted tax dollars. Mark provides business owners, professionals, and individuals the guidance they need to prepare their taxes today for better tax planning tomorrow. Using a solutions-driven and unique holistic approach, Mark breaks down the loopholes around tax planning and preparation along with must-know financial planning and tax reduction techniques. Listen in as we tell you what no one is going to tell you about taxes. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to the Tax Endgame, where your host, Mark Kanakaris, explains the ins and outs of the game that is your taxes. Mark is an IRS enrolled agent. That's the highest credential awarded by the agency. In other words, he knows taxes. I'm Patrice Sikora, and in this episode, we'll learn about Mark from Mark, and we'll talk about the importance of tax planning. Mark, let's take it from the top. How did you get into this business?
Well, it's funny. I was about 20 years ago, right about 9/11, I was working as a tax accountant for Raytheon, the defense contractor. And I worked there for several years, doing a lot of long-term planning and budgeting. Worked for 3 CPAs that were the CFOs of the company at the time. They ran different divisions. And in the evening, they came to me one day and said, Mark, you've been a great job here. We have a side practice, as you probably heard throughout the hallway, so to speak, and we'd like you to come work with us and do some tax work. So I got on there. I worked for them part-time in the evenings, and I got a really great education because they wouldn't answer any of my questions. And what that means, I would go up and I would say, hey, I've got this problem with this return. And he goes, okay, well, go look it up. When you find the answer, come tell me. And I would do this for years and years. And eventually at one point, the division I worked at lost a big contract called MUOS, and that was the end of our division. And at that time, the CFOs that I worked for, they were different division CFOs. They were at retirement age, and they says, Mark, we got good news and bad news. The bad news is we're retiring, but you've got great skills. You'll get a job anywhere. And there I was. But it was funny. Right before I left, I remember talking to the chief CFO there, and I said, hey, I got a question for you there, Chuck. How come every time I walk in here and I ask you a question, you tell me to go look it up, and I come back and give you the answer? You can't just give me the answer and make my life easier. He goes, well, that's simple. Half the times I don't know the answer, and I need you to go look it up. But either way, you're smarter for what you have done. I was like, and I get it. And the guys I worked for, they were setting up stuff pre-84 Clinton, past Clinton. If there was guys to write a book on tax planning, they would have been the guys to do it. Well, after I left that, I was the CFO for my father's corporation for a couple of years. He eventually got out of the business, and I was there again without a job for the second time and little kids. So I threw out my shingle. Doing what I do was just taxes and advising. And I realized there was a real gap that people walking with the same problems we saw when I was working part-time at Raytheon, that people just didn't know what to do and how to get around the tax code. And I said, well, there's a real niche and there's a real need. And this is what I like doing. I didn't want to be a CPA. I didn't want to do auditing. I got offered an auditing job. I made it for about 3 days and I walked out and said, I can't do this. I'm going to put a gun to my head. This is just mind-numbing stuff. And I know that's the route that they taught back then, but it just wasn't going to really work for me. So I kind of jumped into the speciality, if you will, of just tax planning for individual companies and estates.
All right. So what is tax planning?
Well, we always say tax preparation is what you do today. Tax planning is what next year's taxes will or could look like or should look like. And it's not just trying. There's I'll talk about it some, but there's a short game and a long game when it comes to taxes. You can have a very efficient this year's taxes and drive your taxes as low as you can this year, but you'll probably pay for it in the long run. So I kind of have the idea, if you're working and you're not near retirement, winning the short-term game probably isn't a bad idea. But when it comes to retirement, you better be focused on the bigger game, or the Uncle Sam's going to take a big chunk out of your life.
All right. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. You're right. But let's go back to a client. Who's your ideal client? Who do you like to work with?
I probably work with retirees the most and some business owners because they got for me, I can really sink my teeth into that kind of individual and make massive changes. I want to help everybody. I think we all have that, but I can do the most good for those who have the more complicated taxes, who have a variety of investments, and just have not had any sort of coach or planner come in and show them what they're doing right and wrong. And that's a big deficiency and just in the whole marketplace in itself. But of course, those people who are, raising a young family like myself, there's still little tricks that we can do now that for doing this for 20 years, I can tell folks, don't do this now. Just pass on that all together. You'll thank me later. Why? 20 years of experience. I've been there, done that, thousands of returns. I know what things look like in the future.
What kind of client education do you do, number one? And number two, does the client accept that education?
Great questions. As far as client education, obviously they're going to get an education the first time they sit down with me, because I'm going to go through their tax return with a fine tooth and comb, and we can cover that a little bit more later. Outreach-wise, I would say we do a lot of workshops or educational classes. Sometimes we do it through the Coalition of Financial Educators, which is a nonprofit that we're a part of. And sometimes we just do them ourselves. We'll cover topics like Social Security, required minimum distributions. And right now we're doing a tax and income planning class. And the donations from that are going to the American Cancer Society.
Nice. All right. Do the clients listen to you, though, with the education?
Last night we were talking to the class. I think people were like, well, I don't need the next class, Mark. Let's just go talk now. So, yeah, I think people do, because what I see is most people just don't have a clue of what's going on in the tax realm. It's so confusing. The rules are changing every day. And most people just, they're like deer in a headlight. And you can't blame them. The tax code is complicated, which is what keeps me gainfully employed. But you need somebody who spends their time in that mind-numbing information to get you on the right side of the rules. I tell people, you don't have to cheat in your taxes. You just got to know the rules. The problem is nobody wants to learn them.
So do you have a team that helps you learn those rules, or do they know the rules? How do you work?
Yeah, I have a great team here. I have Kim Vickers, who's been with me for going on 9 years this year. She was a executive assistant to this CFO of owner of a couple of practices. They built houses, did a few other things. And she was his right-hand man. She comes with such great experience. I kind of say she's been there, done that, had the T-shirt made, shipped, and returned for any damages. She's just been around the block, and she can see things that, sometimes I don't see, because I'm buried in the details of what I do. I think my clients love Kim. She is just great. She's a godsend. My kids call her Aunt Kimmy. I think the world of her. She's just awesome. She's the glue to this practice. I kind of say, I just work here now. She really runs the show. And then I've got the managing partner on the tax side, Christina Lorcher. She has been another godsend. It's interesting enough, she doesn't even come from an accounting background. Originally, she was a registered nurse. And I think a lot of people take their nurses for granted, but a lot of the schools that I know about nursing, you have to be very smart to get into nursing school. I think most nurses probably could have gone on to medical school if they had a desire. But while she was working for MCI WorldCom, she ended up getting her accounting degree, and MCI WorldCom paid for it. And she started off kind of part-time-ish, and it got to the point where, like, well, you just can't leave anymore. You got to come back full-time now. We just can't go on without you. And one of the things I do respect about her, without a doubt, is her attention to detail. And if she's going to find an answer, she will not stop till she gets it. And it really is that good to have that, because there's times I don't have enough time to always look up every detail to the answer, but I know she will if I put her on it. So I'm glad to have her. She's been a big help.
I'll tell you, shout out to nurses. I agree with you wholeheartedly. They are smart people, very smart. Now, you mentioned you were having some kind of educational class with the proceeds going to the Cancer Society. How else are you active in the community?
Well, I have 3 sons, so I coach about every sport in the sun between baseball, football, and soccer. I've got kids from 5 to 16. My oldest is a defensive lineman on the Creekview High School football team. He got his first big sack last week. He was all excited. I've been active in my church. I've been on the financial committee. I've been part of some of the men's group. I've even taught Sunday school, and it looks like I'm going to be teaching it again because we don't have enough teachers this year.
Bravo.
It's been quite rewarding. I actually even sponsored 2 kids in Africa. They have the birthday of one of my sons, and I just felt like I've been so blessed in this industry. I needed to give more to church, and I found World Vision, and I've been sponsoring kids. And as I raise money from some of the educational classes that we do, we'll probably donate more money to those guys. We're also a veteran-owned business. I served in Iraq in 91. I did a short tour and I got out, and I'm glad to be here. There's a lot of veterans up here where we have the office. So I also like working with the veterans because really, I feel like we've been an underlooked group of people that really need help. And I always say, we should be thankful for the country we live in. And I also think we don't do our job sometimes when it comes to jury duty. I know we all hate it, but I was talking to a client who has to do it. And I told him, hey, listen, you really need to do it. It's important. It's really what we fought for. But if you don't do that second half, everything we died for is semi in vain. So I do think we live in the greatest country in the world. We have every opportunity here, but we all have to still do our part, whether it's serving there or serving in other ways.
Well, thank you for your service. I appreciate that. Now, I mentioned earlier you are an enrolled agent. What is it? What is it? And what other designations do you have?
Sure. So if an enrolled agent is federally authorized to practice taxes before the Department of Treasury, we are representatives of taxpayers before the Internal Revenue Service. That includes for audits, collections, and appeals. It is the highest credential that the IRS awarded. It's recognized in all 50 states. Unlike an attorney or a CPA, they're only licensed by the state and only empowered in those states. So that's a very big differentiation. If you were to call the IRS and you got a letter and they said, okay, I need some help. I don't know what I do because I did my own taxes. They're not going to tell you to call a CPA. And remember, I'm an accountant and I'm not downplaying the value of CPAs. They have a very big important role, but they're kind of a general practitioner where I would be the specialist. When you go to tax school, we're going to learn about cost and managerial accounting and mergers and acquisitions and auditing and all these different things. That's very important. So we can all be on the same playing field when it comes to reporting our financial information, but they're not tax experts. They kind of picked it up. I think we kind of picked it up because there's nobody else left to do it. I also have 3 degrees. I've got a degree in accounting, philosophy, and economics. I'm also a registered financial consultant, and I was given the honor of Kentucky Colonel for the work I think I've done in the community. Even had the state flag, the US's flag flown over the state capitol was actually given to me by Senator Price.
That's quite a list of accomplishments there. Very impressive. And you mentioned
I had 20 years to work on it.
Well, then it's a short list. I mean, keep going. You mentioned philosophy. What is your business philosophy?
So I see there's 2 things when it comes to my philosophy. First, I just say this, the tax code, it's just so complicated. It's not written in English, and taxpayers are at a huge disadvantage without planners to guide them through their return. People think just because they put numbers on a return, they did it right, but they're missing the much, much bigger picture. I kind of call it's like the Sherpa. You use a Sherpa to get to the top of Mount Everest, but their importance isn't getting up the mountain. It's actually getting down where most of the hikers actually die. Because like I said before, there's kind of 2 tax games. When you're younger and you're working and maybe 60 and younger, you're probably worried about the short-term game. But the big game, when you retire, you better be focused on the long-term game of taxes, because that's where the IRS is going to take a huge chunk out of you. And if you don't focus on the big game, you're going to lose. The IRS wrote the rules in their favor. We have to get clients to see this, understand it, but we're able to do it because we can show them a tax return of what they're doing and what they could do and let them compare it side by side and go, yeah, there's a better way. And it's not just me telling them, we show it to them.
How?
To me, the tax row code is it's like playing a card game with a 5-year-old who changes the rules every time they play. I call it I win. But luckily with this 5-year-old, once he writes down the rules, he's got to at least honor it. I mean, I've played cards with my 5-year-old. I've lose every time. Yes. I think the game's called Kento Wins, not poker or
Old Maid or anything. No. You told me the other day when we were talking that you strive to make a big change for someone but not sell anything. What did you mean?
I don't think anybody likes to be sold anything. I think like when you go to a car dealership, you feel like there's salesmen running out there to sell you a car. And we all like to buy. I think people, when they have good information, they're going to make good decisions. They just don't get the information because most CPAs, their practice is not built around tax planning. I think it just puts them in a big, disadvantage. Taxes to me is like a giant chess game. And sometimes I think people don't realize they got to sacrifice their pawns or their short-term taxes for the bigger win and checkmate.
I like the analogy. Oh, and I'm looking at that, your logo for the podcast too. It's got chess pieces on it.
If you think about it, taxes is a chess game. I mean, there are a bunch of rules. I mean, think of each of the you have the rooks and the castles, and you got the bishop. They're all different rules, but they work together to get checkmate. So once you know all the rules and make them work together, That's how you get your checkmate. You just don't, I guess, just send the pawns out. I mean, everyone's got a purpose. All the rules have a rule and you can use them, and the rules are there and you can work within them. You just got to know how to make them work. Some rules sort of seem like they contradict each other, and you have to know the intent of which rule would be more dominating. And I always ask myself, if I'm going to do something kind of off the beaten path, non-traditional kind of work, I always ask myself, if I was an auditor and I was sitting in here trying to get in reverse what I did, what would I say to me to say, this isn't good, this isn't going to work? And that's how I feel I get back and make sure when we put together a plan, it's going to be sound. Maybe 10 out of 100 people need a very customized plan. Most of them just need to know the rules better to use the rules to their advantage.
All right. Well, when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
Well, obviously with 3 sons, I'm a very busy guy. Coaching, like I said before, my sons are really my priority. The thing in my life that I am most proud to have. I feel very blessed. We're big outdoors people, hunting, fishing. When I'm not coaching, I do play a little golf. And I've gotten a green egg this year, and I've gotten really big into smoking and grilling out. I really love this green egg. It's wonderful. And I really do enjoy cooking on it and finding, and lately, at this point in life, I've kind of got all my toys. I like the barbecue books people get and go, oh, I want to make that this weekend. That looks like fun.
If you had all the money in the world, how much barbecue would you make, and what would you do with the money?
If I won the lottery, say some ridiculous amount, I think that first and foremost, I'd really want to help with world hunger. I think it's disgusting that you think of some of these huge corporations that make enough money per quarter to wipe out world hunger. I mean, they can't do it just once. I mean, it would make the world a better place. I mean, I would do my part to make this world a little bit better and help those who can't help themselves, because, we're so lucky to be born here. When I think about the boys I've sponsored in Africa and what I can do for them, you feel like it's not enough. And I've been blessed. I've gone on a couple of cruises to a couple of countries. And when you see how some of these people live in like Honduras or Belize, and they've got the most beautiful beaches in the world, but you see how they live. And if your heart doesn't go out to them, I think there's something wrong. And that's why I think there's a way to make things better if I had the ability to do it. And that'd be probably what I would do. I would take that money, I invest and take all the profits every year. And I'd really work on changing a lot of the wrongs that are out there.
Great. Name one thing most people don't know about you.
My wife is from Tokyo, and I have a niece and nephew over there, and I only have sons, so I know nothing about daughters. But and I always tease guys or at the golf course or something. That daughter of yours got you wrapped around your finger. But when I went to Japan one year, and she was young, she was about 4, and so was my second son. My third one wasn't born yet. And we woke up one morning, and I'm sitting at this tatami table, and there's like a hole under the table where you put your leg, and there's a little heater in there. And I'm sitting there on the little mat there, and she just comes in and sits in my lap and puts her arm around me. And ever since then, that girl has me wrapped around her finger, I guess. Yeah. And one of my other nieces up here, I call her peanut butter. She kind of has the same thing. She just gives me big hugs and smiles. And that's the thing that people don't know. I really have a soft spot for those girls. And it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know if I'd be a good father for girls because I never raised one. But like when I taught Sunday school, I enjoyed it because for every Sunday I had like 4 daughters for an hour. And at the end of that hour, I got to give back to mom and dad. So it was great. So when the crying came, I didn't have to deal with it. But Mal really touched my heart. And I just think that's a big blessing that I got. And it really, those girls touched my heart quite deeply. And it's just something most people wouldn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a mantra or a motto that you use?
Yeah, I guess I'd say something like taxes are something you just can't hit kind of head on. Sometimes you got to come in from the side window. It's not always straightforward. And that's, I think, the illusion that people who would do it themselves get caught up in. They think they're just saving a couple $100 because they're punching numbers on a TurboTax or whatever it is. And to be honest, the number one audited software, I think, is TurboTax that we receive letters on. When people come in with a letter, we ask who did it, and they usually say, I did it on TurboTax. And I think the delusion is, and the government doesn't want you to do tax planning because they know that if they get you do it the way they want you to do it, man, they're going to just milk you dry. And we were just talking about that in the class last night. And I was telling folks, one of the biggest bombs you have sitting in retirement is going to be your IRA account. So I said, look, we've done, and I've got reports I give to my clients or people interested in talking to me. And it shows if you have let's say you have $1 million IRA. We always use big numbers, but if you have $1 million IRA and you live to be age 90, just an age 90, you're going to pay roughly $800,000 in taxes. God knows how many tax brackets you jumped. You're going to be taxed on your 85% of your Social Security. And if you have a pension, you're just adding insult to injury. Now, yeah, we all want pensions, but I think the bigger mantra is you've got to learn how to come in all these other side windows to start working at winning that bigger game. And it's not something you're going to win overnight. I tell people you spend 30 years putting money in a 401k. I am not Harry Potter. I can't wave a magic wand and make those taxes go away overnight. But give me a few years and I will win the big game. I will have checkmate.
All right. A client wants to come in and meet with you. What is the first meeting like?
Well, most people don't know what to do or say when with a tax planner. So I try to make it an open conversation. I'm going to tell them a few things. I'm going to say, first and foremost, folks, guys, we're just going to talk about what you've been doing, why you've been doing it, what advice you've been getting from your other tax preparer, CPA, enrolled agent, or even just Bob around the block does taxes, and what the advice they're getting. And then I'll talk about, well, what does your financial stockbroker say to you? And what does your lawyer say to you? And one of the things we usually find there's a friend of mine who wrote a great book. It's called Three Blind Mice. And basically it just says that the tax guy, the financial guy, any a lawyer are not working in a cohesive manner. And one of the things that we do here at our practice is we solve that. So we have a financial planning firm, we have the taxes in it. And I know what to say to most lawyers. And I've read enough wills and helped clients write enough trusts. I know what needs to be done and used and when, where, and why. The advantage of being in this business for a long time. But we're going to ask a lot of questions. Sometimes people go like, I just feel like I left the principal's office. Well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. And I want my clients to realize that this taxing isn't a game. The IRS is not playing around. They will win if you let them.
Does everyone who comes in as a potential client leave as a client?
Not always. I like to think that I want my goal to be to help everybody who really wants help. But, some people I think they're just never going to be happy. But I like to think that, yes, I could probably solve almost anybody's tax problem who comes in. But I will tell people I might not be the right guy for you. You might not be the right client for me. But then I always give them my doctor story. And I have this doctor. She's a nice lady. And she's about my age. She has like zero bedside manner, but she tells me the way it is. She's cut and dry to the point. And I know she tells me that because she does have my best interest at heart. And I tell my clients too, I like a lot of my clients. We don't have to be in love. We don't have to hug every time I see you, but I want you to know, I do care about this. I don't want people wasting money. It's just like being sold something. I don't want you wasting money on something that you didn't have to do. I feel like there's not enough integrity out there in the marketplace. And I'm going to do at least my part for everybody who comes in. So my clients will know that I'll never give you bad advice, even if I don't work with you. But I would say the most do stay because they see the value of the one-stop shop.
Mm-hmm. All right. How can someone reach you if they want to come in and see you?
Always say, just give us a call, 678-981-6331. You can always email me at Mark.K at Cherokee Tax Group. We're really easy to get a hold of. Can usually answer the phone or Christina. They will get you on my calendar. If you send me an email reply, and we're updating our emails to have that auto book a appointment with me, so people can do that. You can book 30 minutes. Always our first and sometimes second meetings with clients are always complimentary because sometimes I got to hear what's going on and look into it and say, here's the kind of things you can be doing. What makes sense to you? And at that point, we could figure out how we want to move forward. And sometimes depending on what they need, there's usually maybe not any real costs up front. It may be later on, but the approach we take, people like it. They don't feel pressured. And I hope they just feel like they're at the right spot at the right time.
Outstanding, Mark. Thank you so much. Mark Kanakaris of the Cherokee Tax Group. Follow or subscribe to the Tax Endgame to know when a new show is ready. And of course, share with friends, even family. Heck, you might even impress them. I'm Patrice Sikora, and let's talk again later.
Thank you for listening to the Tax Endgame with Mark Kanakaris, the podcast that shows you how to win the tax game. Have questions about topics covered during the show? Visit www.CherokeeTaxGroup.com. Email us at info@CherokeeTaxGroup.com or email Mark directly at Mark.K @CherokeeTaxGroup.com. You can also call us at 678-981-6331 to set up a free consultation. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Cherokee Tax Group. The content has been made available for information and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional tax advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your individual situation.